With an IQ of 185 at 6 years old, when most people's IQ is 85 to 115. This biracial child prodigy was a classically trained pianist and was world renowned. However, most of her history is hidden. We don't know anything about her. Her name is Philippa Duke Schuyler. Perhaps because she had to perform overseas, because she was rejected here in the United States, because of racism. She struggled with her race. She had a problem with being black, she had a problem with being white, and for a time she called herself a Spanish woman. Join me today as we learn all about Philippa Duke Schuyler and her tragic end. I'm Lady TrenettWilson, and I want to welcome everyone. Hello, subbies, my royalers. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if this is the first time that you come, welcome to our lecture. I hope you learn a lot and enjoy today's lesson. Now, Philippa was born in Harlem, New York on August the 2nd, 1931. According to her, she believed she was an experiment by her mother and her father. Her mother's name was Josephine Schuyler, and she was a white heiress and granddaughter of slave owners. And as you see here, she was some kind of performer as well. Now, her father, George, was a prominent essayist and journalist, and so he was really intelligent and smart. Now, the couple came together because they were trying to do something. They believed if they could mix the races together, that the disharmony that the world was experiencing over racism could be eliminated. And so they created little Philippa. Now, in truth, Josephine, her mother, was said to be allegedly abusive toward Philippa, driving her, working her. You see, Josephine was the first kind of Hollywood mom, and her goal was to put her daughter, Philippa, up on the stage. And you know what? Philippa really showed her gifts very, very early in life. They said that her mom, Josephine, made her eat purely vegetarian and raw steak. That sounds disgusting, but a lot of times when you bring in different cultures, they don't eat like you, they don't live like you. So this was her experience. Philippa was so smart. By the time she was 2, the New York Herald Tribune did a little story on her. They called her the Negro baby. And at only 19 months, she knew her alphabets and she could read and write. Now, by 4, she could play the piano. So she would play compositions by Schumann and even Mozart. And she started writing her own music. Her career started early. By the time she was 4 years old, she had already won the first of many gold medals. This was 1936, and she won and won. This was an event sponsored by the National Guild of Piano Teachers. And then she won 8 consecutive prizes with the New York Philharmonic, the Young People's Concert in Carnegie Hall. She was eventually barred from the competition because she kept winning so many times. She toured the world. And then, also she was so known that the New York mayor, LaGuardia, the airport is named after him. He even came to her home to listen to her play. He named June the 19th, 1940, Philippa Duke Schuyler Day. And even when she was young, she graduated by the time she was 11, and she could read and she could write. She was touring the world. But, I've never heard the NAACP or the Urban League, anybody ever honor this woman. She was absolutely brilliant. She could speak 5 languages, Spanish and English and French and Italian. I mean, she was absolutely brilliant. But when she was a teenager, something happened. Her parents gave her a scrapbook, as many of our, we as parents do. We keep scrapbooks of our children, and they gave it to her, and she saw in this scrapbook that basically she was an experiment, and that they had proven it right. That if they mixed these races, that they could create this perfect person, and she could do perfect things. So she was like, "You mean y'all created me for an experience instead of love?" And because of that, she really grappled with her blackness and her whiteness, eventually turning away from both of them and calling herself Spanish. She also called herself white for a while. And so Even though she was brilliant and she toured the world, she really had that problem later on, even in her relationships. Because she was so beautiful, people would ask her, "Why you're not married? Why you're not married?" And a lot of times you'll look at couples and, either the man is not what you would call ideal, or the woman may not seem to the world what is ideal, but they make it work. And it's because they have a level of humility, a level of something that keeps them together. Whereas really beautiful women, even like Holly Berry, she brought the rights to this movie, in fact, to this woman's story. They have a problem with getting married, and she did too. And I think too, with the problem she was having with her inside as to being who she was, she didn't want to deal with black men too much. Now she did get pregnant by one. She did eliminate that pregnancy late in her pregnancy. And she wanted to marry what she said, quote unquote, an Aryan, so she could produce the perfect child. So in her mind, whiteness was perfect because she had been treated so badly as a black woman. So this was the end of her life, grappling with that. She wrote many articles after she left the music industry. She left and had still a beautiful career. She still played even after she kind of quote unquote retired. So she followed her father's footsteps and went into journalism. She never got married. She never had children. So that's what she was doing. She was writing articles and she wrote 4 books. Then she took a tour to Vietnam. And by 1959, she was passing completely as white, so she could tour South Africa. A lot of people think, oh, when they think of Africa, it was all black. But during apartheid and different things, there were a lot of white people there as well. So here she was. She went to tour. And the first time she went as a performer, but she wanted to go back as a reporter, a war reporter to, let the world know what was going on. So on May 1st, 1967, a year after she went the first time, she boarded this helicopter. Now, what she was there for was they were going to go to this orphanage in Da Nang and rescue these children. However, the helicopter crashed and she was lost. Now, they said when it first crashed, she survived, but because she couldn't swim, that's the reason she passed away. That's a running joke about black folks and swimming. If you know, you know. Many people went to her funeral. It was just awful. The way she passed and her passing, the world really mourned. She was truly a gifted woman and a beloved woman. Her mother, Josephine, was devastated by her passing, and she actually took her own life only 2 years later. So, unfortunately, Mr. George was left alone. He had lost both his daughter and his wife, and the experiment didn't seem to go so well. Her accomplishments are just huge. She has a school named after her in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And later on, it was found out that through the black box that the pilot had turned off the plane intentionally and shut down the engine so that he could give them an experience of what it was like to be in a war-torn country and the terror that they may have faced. But when he tried to turn it back on, he didn't do it soon enough. And so that's why the plane did crash and did what it did. That's just like the story of Bessie Coleman. I left a link if you want to hear her story as well. What is going on with people playing in the air? And this brilliant woman lost her life while she was on a mission to try to help children. So that was such a sad story and an ending to such a musical prodigy that I have never heard of. And I hope today that you learned something new, something elite and royal about your Black history. These people are hidden in history. I'm just so excited to honor her, and I would like to see more people honor her through the music industry because she was absolutely brilliant. I left a link if you want to hear her play. I don't know if I said that earlier, but I did. I left a link there. I want to thank you all for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed today's lesson. And I left also some other stories, you all. If you want to learn more about the Royal Black and Elite, definitely click down below. I've always leave links for you all to be able to click on other stories like this, hidden in history about brilliant and talented and gifted men and women throughout our Black history. I had mentioned that Holly Berry bought the rights to her story, and she wanted Alicia Keys to play the lead, but there's been no more word of that since 2004. So we'll see if it ever comes to the big screen. I want to thank you all for joining me. As you know, my lectures are for entertainment and educational purposes only. My sources were blackpast.com, Catherine Kisner's Artificial Color, and Rose Phyllis's Prodigy and Prejudice. It was an article in the New York Times. So, thank you for joining me for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. Y'all leave a comment. I love to hear what you have to say. And by you liking it, it drives the video through the algorithm. So I appreciate your support. Have a great day, and I hope you learned a lot.